Am I far
You're
enough
good.
back?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Gosh, I gotta make sure that I don't mess anything up when the
That's
camera's
right.
on me.
I know.
So, as Pam shared in the last year, my name's Eric Doss, and I think just by way of introduction, I should probably tell you a little bit about how my wife and I got to doing this work. My wife is the solo pastor at the Elliott Presbyterian Church in Lowell, Massachusetts. Before that, she was serving a congregation as an associate in South Carolina on the coast. Much different climate than I'm experiencing here. So, and also much different than in Boston. So, I long for the days when a cold afternoon was like 40 degrees, 45 degrees. The good news is it's not going to be this cold in Scotland and Ireland. So there might be a little bit of rain. So we started leading pilgrimages kind of unintentionally more than a decade ago. Our congregation wanted to go to the Holy Land, and we couldn't really find anybody who was kind of consistent with our values and what we wanted that experience to look like. And so my wife was like, well, I'll just plan this myself. How hard could this possibly be? And she did, and she did a wonderful job. We had a great experience. We took 28 people, 28 or 29 folks through the Holy Land. We had a great time. We dealt with a bunch of challenges with United Airlines and barely making it there and being delayed. But it was a great experience, and what really grew out of that was the importance of kind of having local connections when we're traveling. Anybody can go to the Holy Land and see all of you could spend a year touring the Holy Land and never even scratch the surface. But what really made the experience was, the opportunities that we had to do things like have coffee at my friend's house, who's a Palestinian Muslim shop owner on Manger Street as we're going into Bethlehem, or we visited a refugee camp and we do a cooking class there in one of the oldest refugee camps in Bethlehem. There's like personal connections that give you something to take home that's not in the Rick Steves version of the trip. And so as we've moved from just doing trips to the Holy Land to doing Scotland and Ireland, Northern Ireland, Greece, Turkey, all of these places, we've really worked hard to develop those relationships. It is, that's especially acute right now as we see our friends in the Holy Land who are struggling with an absolute, disaster, man-made disaster that's really impacted their economy, that's impacted their livelihood. Our friends are getting laid off, their businesses are going bankrupt, and so these are friends of ours, the same way they are in Scotland and Ireland. And so I hope that as if you're able to join us, that I hope one of the things that you take from your time in Scotland and Ireland is the personal connections. And in addition to the connections that we bring to this, I'm really excited because I have never been to some parts of Northern Ireland that you are visiting because of Pam's connections there and because of the time that Pam spent at the Groomsport Church and in Bangor. So it's a really exciting trip and one that I hope if you're able to join will really give you some insight and some opportunity to connect with folks that you would not normally meet as you travel around the world if you were doing that as a tourist instead of a pilgrim. So this itinerary is 15 days, including travel days. We're going to start in Edinburgh, so we're going to start with kind of an introduction to the Presbyterian Church, the Kirk, the Church of Scotland. We'll visit St. Giles. Is any Harry Potter fans here? Okay, so as you're walking around the kirkyard at St. Giles, you need to read a number of the tombstones because according to tradition, that is where J.K. Rowling spent a lot of her time, was at the Elephant Cafe, which is just kind of up the street from the Grassmarket. And you will see a lot of names that may be familiar to you in the grass, or not at St. Giles, but at Greyfriars. So we're arriving actually on a Sunday morning, so we'll have the opportunity to worship at St. Giles, then we'll go down to Greyfriars. So those are kind of two different expressions of the contemporary church. St. Giles is this beautiful, big steeple. I mean, it's the Scottish Cathedral, or the Presbyterian Cathedral. It's where the Queen laid in state because she had died in Edinburgh. Quick fact, I just gave you the answer, but there's only been one monarch in the history of the British crown that died Presbyterian. And that happened in 2022, because the Queen is the head of the Anglican Church when she's in Great Britain, when she's in Britain, but when she is in Scotland, she's just a regular member of the Presbyterian Church. So she's the only monarch to die as a Presbyterian. So we've got that going. So she died when I was there with a group, and it absolutely destroyed all of my plans and abilities for the rest of the trip. So, I'm still not to the point where I can comfortably say God save the Queen. Because, my people had to hike like a mile to get to the hotel because the Royal Mile was shut down. Anyway, it was a total mess. But so we'll spend some time in Edinburgh. From Edinburgh, so we'll visit St. Giles, we'll visit Greyfriars. Greyfriars is a really interesting church because they are doing a lot of work. They're doing a lot of work with the folks that live right around the church. So the Greyfriars, so before the Reformation, that was a Catholic church. They were always in service to the poor and the least among us, and that has continued through, through to today. They have a number of social programs there. They have a cafe that we'll eat at that's done as kind of as a social enterprise. They have beautiful, any woodworkers here? They have an incredible wood shop there that they are using to make things out of old pews. So there's lots of churches that are closing, and they have all of these beautiful hundreds of years old pews. And as they're being repurposed, they're pulling those out, and they've created this wood shop, and it's skilled training for folks who would maybe have difficulty otherwise finding employment. So it's a really interesting way to see a couple different versions of the Presbyterian experience in Scotland. We'll head up to St. Andrews from Edinburgh. There's the St. Andrews Cathedral and the castle there at kind of one end of the town. Hopefully, I know the pastor at Holy Trinity Church there in St. Andrews, they have a Gutenberg Bible, not the first edition, but like 3 years later. So that would be like 1680 something. And they'll totally, assuming that Marian's there, who's the pastor of the church, they'll bring it out. You can put on gloves and thumb through a Gutenberg Bible. It's just a beautiful, church in downtown, right in the center city in St. Andrews. From there, we're going to head to the west coast of Scotland as our journey to get to Iona. Has anybody been to Scotland before, other than Pam? Has anybody been to Iona? Okay. So it's a bit of a trek to get there. So we'll leave from St. Andrews when we're wrapped up there. We'll get into Oban, and we'll spend the night. There's a hotel right behind the ferry station, and so because we won't be able to make it all the way to Iona by the time we get there, so we'll spend one night there. We get up the next morning, and we'll take a ferry to a bus to another ferry to a walk to get to Iona, and I promise you it's worth it. And the nice thing about this itinerary, that as Pam and I were working on it, is that we have some time on Iona. If you visited Iona with, if you were traveling with Rick Steves, they stay in Oban, they get up first thing in the morning, they hop on the ferry, they 45-minute ferry ride, hop on the bus in Craignar, they drive all the way across the Isle of Mull, they take another little ferry from Finnefort over to Iona, they get about 5.5 hours on the island, and then at 4:30 they hop on the last ferry and do that all in reverse and end up back in the hotel that they stayed in. Thankfully, we are not doing that. So we will stay 2 nights on Iona. The first evening, the first day we'll get in, we'll do some touring around the island. There's an opportunity to worship with the community there at the Abbey in the evenings, because that's on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Yeah, so they don't have evening worship on Friday, so we'll be there. We'll be able to worship with them in the evening. They also have morning worship every day. We'll start the next day. We'll do a tour around kind of the ecclesiastical history of the Abbey, or of the island. So we'll do the Abbey, the nunnery, some of the little chapels. We'll have lunch, and then our guide will take us on a kind of a nature walk so we can explore not just the religious history of Iona, but also the natural history, the geography, and the geology. There's a golf course there. Any golfers? Okay, if you like to play golf, it's a really prestigious sort of place. It's $1. And that's not the greens fee, that's if you want a scorecard. If you're gonna play without a scorecard, I guess you could you could go for free. All of the hotels there have loaner clubs, so you don't have to bring your clubs. You can just grab whatever they have and head out and play 18 holes. It's on the southern, far western side of the island. So it's the golf course, the Atlantic Ocean, Boston is basically how that goes. The next parish over, as they say.
Yeah.
And then so then we'll wrap up our time on Iona. We'll head down to Glasgow. We'll fly over to Northern Ireland. We will visit. Let me see. So we'll stay in Bangor that night. The next day will be another Sunday. No, the next day we will go to Downpatrick and the Saul Church. So Downpatrick is one of it's related to St. Patrick's mission. At some point, he was alleged to be buried there, according to tradition. We'll visit the Saul Church. The next day is Sunday. We'll worship at Groomsport Pres. In the afternoon, we'll probably go down to do the Titanic experience in Belfast. And then the next day, we're going to start digging more into the Troubles. And so we'll visit, depending on the order of the day, we'll visit Crumlin Road Jail, which is one of the jails that was in the early parts of the Troubles, was used to house prisoners, people who later called themselves political prisoners. They always saw themselves as political prisoners. But they were housed there. That was also a place that Irish revolutionaries were housed at different times. So we'll spend some time learning about the history of Crumlin Road Jail. In the afternoon, we'll spend some time doing a dual narratives tour in Belfast. So Belfast is a city that is very much to this day divided still. And in our minds, we think of those as Catholic and Protestant divisions. And the reality is a lot more complicated, but that's the tools that we use to understand. That's the language framework that we use to understand that conflict. The real conflict is about loyalists, people who want to remain part of Great Britain, and Republicans who want a free Ireland or a 32-county Ireland. But that normally cleaves along the Catholic-Protestant line, but it's not that clear. You'll see that. But in Belfast, there's two roads. There's the Falls Road, which is a traditionally Catholic neighborhood, and then there's the Shankill Road, which is a traditionally Protestant, Presbyterian, Anglican, mostly Presbyterians. And those two neighborhoods are divided by a peace wall that is 10 meters high and taller in some places. And so now, if we think about what we know about the Troubles, the Good Friday Agreement was in 1999. We're now 25 years later, and those peace walls are not only still there, but they are taller now than they were when they were first built. And so the way that we work with a cultural history program, an Irish cultural history program. They provide our guides, and so we'll have a Republican guide who will take us up the Falls side of the road, and at the end of the peace walls, we'll kind of walk around the corner, and his partner, who is a loyalist, will be on the other side and will pick us up and walk us back down the Shankill side of the road. And so you get to hear back to back the two different stories, and the truth is somewhere in there. It's probably neither of them have the truth, but the truth is somewhere in there. I think that what's striking is, to this day, 7 o'clock they start ringing bells, and then the gates close to separate the neighborhoods. And if you don't make it out by then you basically have to leave Belfast and come back around by another way to get, if you're on the side that you don't want to be on. And that's 25 years on when peace exists there. So it's a really complicated place, and it's a really great way to live into that complexity. That evening, we will travel up to Corrymeela. And Corrymeela is an intentional community on the Antrim coast, which is the far kind of northeastern coast of Northern Ireland. And Corrymeela is a community. It's a dispersed community. So members of the community live all over the world. They come back a couple times a year for a members' weekend, and they're just people who have agreed to live their lives according to a particular covenant about priorities and about the way that they manage their finances and the things that they are involved in and the causes that they support. But Corrymeela is really vital in the story of the Troubles because it was a place that was kind of without. It was a place that was neither Catholic or Protestant, although it was founded by a Presbyterian pastor. It's a place that Catholic and Protestant kids used to, and still to this day, come to visit with each other and get to know each other, because if you're Catholic or Protestant, it is entirely possible that you will grow up in your neighborhood, you will never meet somebody who is not like you. The educational system in Ireland and Northern Ireland is still very segregated. The communities, the neighborhoods, the streets down to a street level are still very segregated. So it's entirely possible if you're born into a Catholic neighborhood, into a Catholic family, you will grow up in a Catholic neighborhood, you will go to Catholic schools, you will go to a Catholic college if you decide to do that, and you may well move back to that Catholic neighborhood and never meet a Protestant, and vice versa. So Corrymeela is a place where they try to bring these folks together so that they can at least know each other a little bit. It's a lot harder to hate people if you know them. And so we'll spend 1, 2, I think 2 nights there, maybe 3 nights there. I can't recall. I think 3 nights there. Part of that time will be with a friend of ours Kieran is actually going to lead the whole pilgrimage, but Kieran is a friend of ours. She's a Presbyterian pastor. Her and her husband are members of the community. They live there on the site. He's the head of the community, or the executive director. I forget his exact title. But there's opportunities for reflection and worship and kind of Kieran's a spiritual director, so she'll be leading some of that experience there. The evenings at Corrymeela always close with worship in their chapel. It's called the Cree. Cree's the Irish word for heart. So the heart of the community is this chapel. So there's worship there every night. It's normally worship with some sort of music, and it's really lovely. While we're up there, we'll have the opportunity to go to the Giant's Causeway. We'll have the opportunity to do some hiking along the Antrim coast. So it's about a 4.5, maybe 5 mile walk from a place called Duns Everett Castle to the Giant's Causeway. So if you want to go for a nice hike along probably the most beautiful piece of coastline that you'll ever see, you can do that. If you don't feel like hiking, then the bus will take you to the Giant's Causeway. We'll spend some time there. We'll also go to another castle that we talked about that I'm blanking on right now. Dunluce Castle. We'll go to the Cricklereed Rope Bridge. And at your own risk, you can go across the thing. They say it's safe.
It's safe.
It's totally safe. If you don't like heights, this might be the place that you stop on one side and watch other people enjoy it.
Right.
We'll leave Corrymeela and we'll head to Dublin. Dublin is still, we're still, one of the things that we want to see in Dublin is the Book of Kells. So the Book of Kells is an illuminated manuscript that was started on Iona by St. Columba and his monks. Islands, monastic communities in general, were subject to Viking raids, and so they took the book, they squirreled it away when the Vikings were coming. It ended up in a town called Kells for a long time. It was finished, and now it's on deposit at the Trinity College Dublin. They have changed this year. They finally, 2 years late, they have a brand new kind of immersive experience around it. So it used to be it's a great exhibition, and you spend a lot of time like digging through and learning about illuminated manuscripts, learning about them in other places, not just as they pertain to the Book of Kells. And then you get to the Book of Kells, and it's like a couple pages that's open, and you can see it. And I would say that the Book of Kells, like the actual book, is much less interesting than all of the information as you go in. But they've launched a new like immersive experience where you're going to be like surrounded by the Book of Kells in like a 360-degree theater. And
oh, wow.
It's brand new. It's like it wasn't open last year when we were there, so it's just open. So I don't really know what that's going to look like for you. But we'll see the Book of Kells. We'll also go to the Chester Beatty Library, which is a museum, not really a library as we would think of it, but that is the largest collection of illuminated manuscripts in the world. and not just Christian ones. So you'll have the opportunity to really immerse yourself in the Book of Kells and then learn about other illuminated manuscripts from Islam, from Christianity, Jewish texts, like all of these different experiences. We'll visit St. Patrick's Cathedral, we'll worship at Evensong, and then on our last night in Dublin, we'll have a little closing dinner, and then we'll head off the next morning, direct flight back to Chicago. I think that's kind of the highlights. I have a brochure, so I don't expect you to remember all of that. Questions? Generally, about the itinerary, about traveling, about Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland. Pam will answer anything you want to know.
Thanks, Eric.
Currency, oh God. Oh, yeah, okay, use your card. So in Scotland, the currency is the pound sterling. In Northern Ireland, the currency is the pound sterling. In Ireland, the currency is the euro. The reason I laugh is because there's only one banknote that is legal tender across the whole UK. So the only banknote that you can actually spend, that you can be guaranteed is redeemable in England, in Scotland, and in Northern Ireland comes from the Bank of England.
Right.
If you get cash out in Scotland, it's going to come from one of 6 Scottish banks who are authorized to print money, but are not the Bank of England. So those generally spend just fine in Scotland. Most of the time you can spend them in England. But in Northern Ireland, they use a different pound because different banks over there, Ulster Bank, and there's 2 others that print the notes. And so if you get pounds, it's just you bring your card. Everybody takes cards. And generally, if you're going from Northern Ireland down to the Republic and you have pounds, they'll accept your pounds. They'll give you change in euros, normally at a bad exchange rate.
Yes.
But my favorite pub in Dublin, they don't run tabs there. They all have the little credit card machines, and they pour you a pint, and you tap your phone, and you pay at every transaction, and nobody takes cash anymore. Like I tried to use cash in that pub one time, and I mean it's just an Irish pub, and cards. Everybody uses cards. So make sure that you let your bank know that you will be traveling. If your bank has the tap to pay cards, those are the preferred ones because everybody taps to pay. So, and let's hope that the dollar increases against the pound and the euro because your money will go further if there's a favorable exchange rate. Yes, ma'am. I see you have a question. You're thinking of something.
I'm just wondering if we wanted to extend the trip to see more of, we individually,
Yeah, sure.
to see more of Ireland.
Yeah. So yes, but it depends. In general, that's not a problem if you're thinking about staying for like a few days, a week. I think that if you're going to be there for more than 2 weeks, the airlines won't let us ticket you with the rest of the group. So if that was the case, then what we would do is we just adjust your price to not include your airfare, and you would purchase your airfare separately. But if you're going to return 2 weeks or less after the group is scheduled to return, you should be just fine.
Would it be the same on the front end?
So on the front end is a little more difficult because the answer is it depends. The nice thing about group airfare is that what it lets us do is lock in a price that we can guarantee for everybody on the trip. The problem is that, and that we don't have to give people names. We don't have to submit your names until about 60 days beforehand. And one of the downfalls is that most airlines require everybody in the group to travel outbound together. So you have to be on the same flight out. So again, if you wanted to go early, you wanted to spend some time in Edinburgh before the rest of the group arrived, then I'm happy to call United and see if they will accommodate that. If they don't, then what we'll do is we would just change the price of your trip. We'd remove the included airfare. You could book your own arrangements, and we just make sure that you are where you need to be on the designated day and time, which would be at Edinburgh Airport at probably 8 o'clock in the morning or so on the 13th. So we can work that out. That's an easy solution. Other questions? We were flying United, so from Chicago to Newark, and then to Edinburgh from Newark. Then on the return, it's a direct flight from Dublin back to Chicago. Nice thing about flying out of Dublin is they have pre-clearance there, so you clear security and customs, and you're basically in the United States before you leave Dublin, so you land at as a domestic passenger, and you don't have to worry about. And it's really efficient. I mean, if you worked for the Customs and Border Patrol and your job was to move to Dublin, like, it's a lot better than other places that you might get stationed. So they work really well, and it's a great airport. The only problem is there's not a lot of really good food once you go through pre-clearance. So make sure you have breakfast before you go through there. But we'll remind you of that before you leave. Other questions?
What about, would you recommend clothing? I mean,
Yeah. So October in Scotland and Ireland is warmer than it is here, which is good. My general answer is, in terms of the type of clothing that you wear, this is what I wear every day when I travel. I have like 4 shirts made by the same company that look exactly like this. But this and jeans, or like Eddie Bauer, like travel pants, you can wear anything you want. But that's perfectly appropriate. Jeans, t-shirts, pullovers, sweaters, whatever you want. Dress in layers, because the weather is different in Edinburgh versus being up on the islands. So when we're on Iona, it's a little cooler. There's a little more chance of variable weather up there. But my answer is generally bring layers. So I'd wear this. I have a pullover, then I have a jacket on top of that. Bring foul weather gear. Bring something for the rain, because if it's raining, if there is a lightning storm, if there is a thunderstorm, we will not be outside. If it is sprinkling to raining, the schedule moves forward. So be prepared for that. Now, if you decide that you don't want to go out in the rain at all, you want to stay in the hotel where it's warm and there's tea, then that's, you're adults, you can make that decision. But our plans move forward, rain or shine. So if you want to see everything and experience everything, make sure you bring some clothes that'll make that less uncomfortable for you. Waterproof shoes or boots. If you're going to buy new shoes, make sure you buy them 6 months ahead of time and break them in, because you don't want to do that on your pilgrimage. I don't know if people around here own rain pants. Rain pants are about the best $50 that you'll ever spend. You can get them from REI, or Walmart actually has a really, what's the name of, Frogs Togs. They're like, Walmart has some really inexpensive, good rain pants. Totally waterproof, but they're lightweight. Throw them in your bag, carry them with you in case the weather turns. I did in 2012. I was in. Let me see. I had like 6 or 7 trips to Scotland and Ireland, and there was only one day that it was raining. There was only one day that the rain impacted our schedule. There were other days when it sprinkled a little bit in the morning, or we went somewhere and then it kind of started raining for a little bit. But in general, we go rain or shine. So bring things that would make you more comfortable. Yeah, absolutely. If you have one of those, especially, they make, I don't know how they origami those things together, but you can get like a golf-size umbrella that folds up like this. That'll make your day a lot more pleasant. In general, the weather is pretty good, and we are not out for long periods of time. We might be walking from here to there. There'll be some times on Iona that we're out in the weather a little bit more. But for women, I started recommending this when we were in the Holy Land, but I recommend it, bring a scarf. I recommend that for everybody, but it started out recommending it for women to bring some sort of scarf, because, man, that just makes the world a lot more comfortable. And if you are somebody who has kind of, if you have, mobility challenges, I would say go get from Amazon. They like trekking poles. They're about $24 for the cheapest aluminum ones. They're lightweight. It is a real force multiplier, and it's one of those things that if you get used to walking with them, then it's not something that you would just use on a day when you're kind of tired and you want a little help. But if you use them the whole time, you just won't get as tired. We have folks on our pilgrimages that are 75 plus, and you know, with some mobility challenges. And, you know, if there's somebody who has gotten used to using like hiking poles, trekking poles, they can go forever. So it's one of those things that I really recommend. Let me see other stuff. That's about it from a clothing and equipment standpoint. Yes, ma'am?
I think we should bring a shirt.
On the day that we are in Northern Ireland, at the Falls and Shankill Roads, I will remind, or Kieran will remind you not to wear anything orange or green.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't think that there's, you know, if you're at the Titanic experience in Belfast, you're fine. If you're around Bangor and, you know, going to church, it doesn't matter. But I would generally avoid, just in that neighborhood, I would avoid, like a bright green, Kelly green shirt or a bright orange shirt. So the orange is the color, is the Protestants. You know, if you look at the Irish flag, green and orange and white. The green is for the kind of Catholic tradition, the orange is for the Protestant tradition. And sometimes now it's well after marching season, so there shouldn't be any issues, but you know, if you have a red shirt, why would you not wear that on the day when orange or green might challenge people? So just, if your entire wardrobe is orange and green, then that's great. But just this one day, let's put on a blue pullover, you know? I've never seen it be a problem. I can't imagine that it would actually be a problem, but if you had on a bright orange shirt and you were walking down the Falls Road, somebody might look at you a little odd, and let's just avoid that. There's no valor in showing off your Scottish heritage there. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you kind of you didn't make fun of it. You mentioned that Americans tend to travel with a little heavy.
Yeah,
luggage.
we pack pretty heavy. Yeah.
Are there places where we need to carry our luggage very far?
So not very far, but multimodal. So we're going to leave the hotel in Oban, and you're going to walk. It's about 5 minutes to the ferry station. There's 2 elevators, and one of them works most of the time. And to board the ferry, you got to go from the ground floor to the second floor. Well, they call it the first floor, but you go from the ground floor to the first floor. And then you have to wheel your luggage onto the ferry, and there's luggage storage. So you put your stuff in there. You grab, when we pull in on the other side, you're gonna grab that, and you gotta walk off of the ferry down a gangway that's probably 100 yards, and then our coach will be waiting right there. We'll load, you know, the bus driver will help load the stuff there. When we get to the other side of the Isle of Mull, we stop in a little town called Finnefort, and the bus is parked here, and it's probably 50 meters down to where we get on the ferry. That ferry, you board, it drops, you know, the front end of the ferry falls down, and you board, mostly not through the water, but occasionally. And then there's no elevators on that ferry. So if you have mobility, if stairs are a mobility challenge for you, then there's a waiting room down on the deck level, and that's where the luggage storage is. And then when we get over to Iona, somebody from the hotel will bring a van down to carry our luggage, and then we'll walk from the ferry port, you know, from the landing spot there up to the hotel, which is like half a mile. So that way you don't have to move your luggage. 1 second. The big place where large American luggage may get you in trouble is we're flying from Glasgow to Belfast, and we're flying on either EasyJet or Ryanair or something like that. And when we book your tickets, we book for you to check your bags, because American carry-on bags are too big to fit on Ryanair or Wizz Air or EasyJet or whatever. So you can check your bags so you don't have to worry about it. But those are the kind of 2 places, is that whole evolution to get across the ferries and onto Iona. Everything else, let me see. Everywhere else, the coach will drop us like right in front of the hotel, and so you just have to wheel your stuff in. And if you've got old school luggage with no wheels on it, treat yourself to something new between now and then. But you know, part of this, like, we're not tourists. Like, part of this travel is about being pilgrims, and part of a pilgrimage is not having all of the luxuries that you're used to in the rest of your world. And, I would encourage you to, as you're preparing to pack, like, look at the things you need and then bring about half of it. And there are a couple of opportunities on Iona, assuming that they're not too busy. You can normally get some laundry done there. You can do laundry in your hotel room and hang it up overnight. And but just think about what you need to pack and what you need to have a good experience. I don't want everybody to be cold and wet and upset the whole time. But a lot of the things that we bring, we don't always need. So think about packing light. I can pack everything into a carry-on suitcase and be gone forever because I can wash all my socks and underwear and things in the sink and hang them up on the radiators. Yes, ma'am.
You answered my question.
Oh.
Would there be laundry?
Yes. So there will be. So at Corrymeela we can't do laundry. Hold on. The St. Columba will probably do. We're there for 2 nights. As long as not everybody wants to do like huge loads of laundry, that shouldn't be a problem there. Corrymeela, and then in Dublin, yeah. So there's a couple of places along the way. Hotels will always do laundry for you. They also charge you hotel rates to do laundry. There's a nice laundry right around the corner from where we stay in Dublin that they can get. If you drop it off in the morning, they'll have it done in the afternoon. Same thing at the St. Columba on Iona, and let me see. Yeah, so pack light, layers, bring more socks and underwear than pants and shirts. Yes, ma'am.
Electrical outlets?
Yeah, so electrical outlets. Generally, there won't be any problem unless you have like a very specific hair dryer need. Don't bring a hair dryer. We can find one at any hotel. The plugs in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Ireland are all British style plugs. So they don't they don't use Euro style plugs in Ireland, even though Ireland is now in the Eurozone, not part of the UK. So remember, there are 2 different kinds of plugs. So there are adapters and converters, and so if you have electronics that need to be plugged in, you need to see if they will take 110 or 220 volts. Most modern electronics will take 220 volts with no problem, so all you need there is an adapter, so you can plug your US plug into a UK plug. But if you have something like, say for instance, you have a 14-year-old electric toothbrush that was made before, that the charging thing was made before everything except to 220, you need a converter to take the 220 mains current down to 110, and then you can plug into that. Ask me how I know that your electric toothbrush charger doesn't take 220 volts, and I'll tell you a story. But they're the best place to buy those. If you don't have them, go to Amazon. They're inexpensive. The adapters, you can get like 4 of them for $10 or something. And don't forget them, because if you have to buy that at the airport, it's $35 for the same adapter that you can get for like $250. So. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Can we use U.S. credit cards?
Yes. Yes. So what I would say is that was a good question. Is currency in general, like plan on using your credit cards, and I would say credit cards, not debit cards, just because I always use credit cards when I travel. The 2 things that I would call your bank about: number 1, to let them know you're going to be traveling, and you can say, I'm going to be in the UK and Ireland and Scotland for these 14 days. I would also make sure that your credit card doesn't charge you a international fee for using the cards. Most don't anymore, but there are still some that will charge you a fee on top of the conversion. And so just make sure that your credit card doesn't do that. And because that can add up, if you're tapping, if you're buying more than 1 pint and you tap your card 3 or 4 different times and you pick up $1 or $2 international fee there. And if you, in the next, 10 months or so between now and when you're traveling, I would also see if your credit card company has tap to pay instead of, because it's just, everything is tap to pay there. And I mean, you can still use the chip card that you slide in, or, like slide your card, but the process is a lot easier if you can just tap to pay. So make sure that you've got an updated card. Yes, ma'am.
Tap to pay?
You tap to pay or Apple Pay. Yeah,
Apple Pay.
sure. Apple Pay, Google Pay, all of that works. It's like you'll see at a pub, like everybody, gets a pint and just taps their phone and gets a pint and taps their phone. So if you have that, then yes. But if you don't and you want to carry a card, I don't think that none of my cards anymore. For a while, I had like 2 that didn't have tap to pay, but now everything has done that. So you can, it's just easier. It takes a lot less time. If you want a little bit of cash, hit an ATM at the
Yes.
airport. You get a better exchange rate getting money from an ATM there than you do getting it from your bank here. But I'll tell you, there's not a lot of need for cash anymore. Even in like the smallest village shop, like the bank fees in the UK and Ireland are a lot lower than ours for taking credit cards, and so they just, they pay like a 1/4% or 1/8% or something on transactions instead of 30 cents plus 3% like we do here. So everybody just takes cards now because it's easy.
What about tipping?
Broadly, the tipping culture is changing in the UK and in Ireland. I would say it's not uncommon to tip now. Maybe like 5 to 10% if you're going out to eat. It used to be that you just round up. If your bill was 67 euro, you just leave 70 euros and that was fine. But I think that one of the bad things that American culture is exporting is tipping culture, and so it's becoming more common. It is certainly not expected, but it is, I see more tip jars over the last 5 years as that is becoming more prevalent. As far as the things that we include on this trip, all of the meals that you eat with us, we take care of gratuity. All of the hotels that you're staying at, we take care of gratuity. All of our tour guides, we take care of their gratuities. Our bus driver, we take care of their gratuities. So for the things that that are included in our trip, you don't have to worry about any extra money. I always say that if you have a really good experience with a tour guide, or if you forgot your umbrella at the hotel and somebody runs it down to you, so sure, you can tip people there, but we take care of all other gratuities for the things that are included in our trip, so you wouldn't need any cash for that.
So out to eat on our own or whatever
Yeah.
on our own, is
Yeah.
tipping expected to be in cash or?
No,
added
you
to the
can
card?
add it to the card about half of the time, and if there's no line on the credit card receipt, then don't worry about it. And if you have some cash, you can leave it, but if not, it's not expected in the same way that it is here.
Well, you said tip jar.
Yeah, so like if I've seen that at coffee shops, like you throw your change in if you use change, but the tipping culture is. What's that? No, it's just kind of a pain for them to convert stuff. Remember, like right now, the euro is worth more than the dollar by about 10%, and the pound is worth about 25% more. So, so it's about $1.25 now for a pound. It used to be like $2.
Yes.
So I'm thankful for that. Yeah. So, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. But it is, if there are opportunities if you want to tip that you certainly can. Any other questions? I'll stay here and answer all the questions that you have. But as I'm noticing that some people are leaving, I'm going to pass these out. So there is one typo on here. Actually, I found another one, but we're not going to talk about that. And that is the early bird registration discount code. It says it's good until January 31st. That's actually should be February 29th. So we're adding a month to that. I think that I just copied that over incorrectly. So that's so if you want to register, if you register before the end of February, there's a code in here. There's a code. It says it on the page when you go to register. Just make sure you enter that, and it's $150 off per person. And yeah, any other? I like I said, I'm happy to answer all the questions that you want, but I'm going to pass these out before anybody has to leave.